Citizen? Welcome to another episode of Citizen Ready. As always, I'm your host, Brett. And today I'm joined by someone who I admire and look up to and actually listen to his content before I ever got to meet him. But now I'm getting to know him, and it's really awesome, and I'm excited. My friend Seth Holehouse. How you doing, brother?
Hey, good, man. It's great to finally be doing this. I know that I've been tricky with my schedule, and I'm not easy. I'm a very the kind of resistance to authority I have towards the government also is towards my own structure and schedule. So
Oh, there you
I'm
go.
not an easy
All good.
guy to pin down. So thank you for your persistence.
Yeah, man, all good, man. I appreciate it. We met in, I think it was North Carolina on the Reawaken tour backstage, but I had listened to your content. You had something that went like super mega viral way back in the beginning. But if I just want to, catch everybody up in case someone doesn't know who you are, can you just give us like a little run up to like who you are today and what
Yeah,
Seth is all
yeah,
about?
yeah. I guess
Yeah.
sure. I guess the story really starts with the first viral video, because I never set out to be a podcaster or a YouTuber. I mean, it wasn't really on my list of priorities to do that. But,
Yeah.
As we were heading into the 2020 election, I, kind of saw, as a lot of us did, that there was a war being fought, but primarily it was an information war. I mean, this is fifth generation warfare. This is, the CCP's unrestricted warfare that we're in right now. And I had spent a lot of my adult life really focusing on trying to raise awareness of the threats of communism, the threat of the Chinese Communist Party, educating people in the history of communism, what's happening with it. And so when I saw what was happening leading up to 2020, you could see that there's a lot of communist-backed elements, whether it was the BLM protests that were had Marxist origins and whatnot. And so like a lot of us going into 2020, I thought, okay, the momentum is here. We're at a good place. And I remember election night. I remember the moment, which I think for a lot of us, I'm not going to compare it directly to, say, JFK or the Twin Towers, but it's like when Brett Baer called Arizona, right? When Fox called Arizona at 63%, that was that moment that I remember in my gut. It was like something really bad just happened. And I think it was pretty easy to
Yeah.
see that it was a stolen election, right? Tied into the voting machines, a lot of things that we now know very clearly. And
Ballot
so,
stuffing. They're just like
oh
stuffing, like
gosh,
mass stuffing them in the ballots. There's videos of it. It's crazy. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so I thought, okay, as just a citizen, right, as a man in America, that's why I called the show "Man in America," is because I thought, like, I'm just a man in America, right? It's kind of like
Yeah.
Citizen Ready. This isn't
Yeah.
the Brett show, right? It's like
That's
every
me.
citizen should be ready, right? And
Yes.
so
Thank you.
my wife and I, we said, okay, well, what's the best way to fight this? Well, this is information warfare. So let's create a video that's going to help expose not only what really happened on the night of 2020, January, or not January, the night of the election, right, in 2020,
Yeah.
also expose the long lead up, the cultural Marxism, the attack that had been happening on America for decades and decades and decades. It led up to that. And so we created this video called "The Plot to Steal America." And so it showed a lot of the evidence of election fraud, but it also showed the media being controlled, the globalist threat, the CCP, et cetera. And so we put this video together. It took us about 3 weeks to put together. And we finally uploaded, I think, on December 7th of 2020. And if you remember at this time, things, like, everything was on fire, right? You were just waiting every second. You're just looking for new information coming out. And then you realize, okay, well, Newsmax, they're not saying Joe Biden won, but it's like, oh, Newsmax folded. It's like Fox folded. And you're seeing all
Yeah.
these news organizations that you felt like they were on your side completely just bowing down to the globalist communist overlords. And so, like, okay, let's make a video that highlights this. We put it up December 7th, and it started to go like mega viral at the very beginning. I think on Facebook, within the first week or two, it had a couple 100,000 shares, like not just views, but that's how many people shared it. That's a major metric if you're looking at videos on Facebook. And then towards the end of December, it ended up actually being shared by President Donald Trump, right? So he,
Right.
at that time, he was still on Twitter. He had, I think, 90 million followers, and he
He's
retweeted it
still on our
one
side.
morning. Yeah, exactly.
I'm
He was
kidding.
still like, oh, well, this guy represents,
Yeah.
restoring the American freedoms in the golden age, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, so just it went mega viral. So his team ended up actually taking the video and then uploading it directly to all of his social media accounts. So if you went to the official Trump YouTube page or Facebook, it was my face was on there, like my video was playing. And so, it's hard to know the exact numbers, but I think it probably got a couple 100 million views. I mean, it was being translated into like overdubbed in Farsi and Japanese and Chinese. It just went like super viral. And
Well, it
so
just shows you everyone believed you. Everyone agreed.
exactly. And also
You
the
were
thing
right.
is that
You were
I
right.
was literally just some guy. I built a
Yeah.
set in my basement. My wife and I
Yeah.
figured out how to do this, and we just made this video. So there was no spin. There was no
Right.
kind of dark money behind it. It was literally just some man in America making a video. And so that's
Yeah.
what then kicked off I guess my podcasting career, because shortly after that, I got in touch with a lot of the main people that were active at that time, like, General Flynn and Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell. If you remember, there's a handful of these people that were really fighting for the people, right? And anyway, so that's what then kind of changed my trajectory in life. I'm like, okay, well, this is my new career, so let's just lean into it. And so, yeah, I think I've done now approaching 800 episodes since then, covering, just I think overall just trying to find the truth, and not being very careful to not only look for things that validate my own ideas. And so I think that's what's kind of set me apart, is that it just like, I'm not pretending to be some expert. I'm not claiming to have some secret intel I'm going to drop to people. I'm just trying to figure out what the heck is going on in this world. And sometimes that discovery leads me to places where I'm like, wow, what I thought was true 3 months ago was a lie that was being fed by some, whether it was Mossad or some kind of rogue KGB, still active, or CCP, or our own CIA. It doesn't matter. And so, I've just continued on with that. But along with that process of doing the podcast and covering this stuff, I became increasingly more aware and interested of the threats that our world faces. And even before starting the podcast, I was already what you would call a prepper, right? And I don't necessarily I like the term for what it really means, but I don't like how they've attached the doomsday prepper stuff to it, which I think it's similar to what they do with the whole conspiracy theorist term. Like, the government doesn't want us questioning conspiracies. The government doesn't want us being prepared. So of course they're coming out with these TV series of doomsday preppers that show these kind of nut jobs that are, in our reality, have really good preparedness, right? Like, they would survive anything, but it really frames them in such a negative light that for a lot of Americans, they're like, oh, I don't want to be a prepper. You know what I mean? And so anyway, this was right in the middle of all this happening was COVID, the lockdowns, the Operation Warp Speed, the vaccine rollout. And so my wife and I were watching all this stuff happening around us. And so we, like, in 2019, I was living in a high rise in New York City. Like, literally, I was on like the 41st floor. I had a little balcony, and it was probably the worst place to live if you're going to be.
I'm never going to defend the zombie apocalypse from up here.
Oh,
I gotta
man.
get out of here.
I mean, my best weapon would have been like throwing plates off the balcony, because you can't even have a gun in New York City. You can't even carry a knife in New York City.
Well, the criminals can, but the citizens
can. Of course, yes. So early 2020, though, my wife and I moved back to Ohio, where I grew up, and then a little bit later, a year or so later, we ended up buying about 5 acres, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, in rural Ohio, and just became really serious about being prepared. I mean, building huge gardens. I built a chicken coop. We had probably 50 chickens. We had massive amounts of gardens built up. I don't want to say this too publicly. We built it. Got a few guns and a few rounds of ammunition, right, to make sure that we were safe. Storable food and everything. And it's got really serious about that. But then, in that process, after about a year or so into it, we realized that we were going off track, and that a lot of what we were doing was very fear-based. And it was, I think, exactly what the globalists, you'd say, would have wanted. It created this mentality of fear, survival, isolation, that reptilian brain, right? Even thinking, gosh, if a neighbor shows up and they're hungry, I'm going to point a shotgun out the door and say, get off my property, right? It really, I think it really changed a lot of our values, because when you're in that survival mode. It's your reptilian brain that's thinking. It's that base survival instinct, and we didn't like that because it was kind of like, what's become of us? Like we've really lost our humanity, and so we've been on this journey to really understand what it means to be prepared and how we can get back to actually being human again. And what we've also come to understand is that it's like the most important thing about being prepared is actually building community. It's your human relations. It's having people that you can depend on. And that's the strongest thing. So we've since moved back to, now we're in upstate New York, which I hate New York. Like, trust me, the politics here suck. But because I spent most of my adult life in New York City and the surrounding areas, as did my wife, all of our community is here. And so we've now got a community. We've got, we're homeschooling our daughters with, there's probably 30 or 40 kids in our little homeschool group. We've got families coming over almost every day, stopping by to drop their kids off with us or coming by for dinner. And so we've really built this strong community. And so anyway, that's kind of taken us to where we are right now. So I try to give it a more condensed introduction, but that's the general idea of what took us to where we are now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said so many great, there's so many things to talk about in there. Obviously, I'm in preparedness as well. I hadn't always been. I talk about community. Like, you have to get yourself right. You have to get right with God. And then you have to spread that to your family. And then you have to spread that to your community. Whether it's because your neighbors show up hungry, why not have them be doing something, or, what are they good at? How can they participate? Can you, and you contribute too. You did say, like, I think it's funny. I was confused. There's a great movie, Denzel, Man on Fire. And I initially, I remember when we talked, I confused you with that. You're Man in America, but now I think America's on fire. And you just said that. So I think we just kind of like merged it all together. Where do you think we are? Like, and I want to talk about preparing and what I know you have a lot of great things, books, websites. You just did a great 1 hour episode on it. But before we get into what people should be doing, where do you think we are in America? Like, we watched all these great leaders say all these great things. I cheered for this orange guy to do this great thing and to save us all. And I feel like we've all been let down. And now there's like shootings in the street and tear gas, and we're like elections and fraud, and no one's accountable. Where do you think we are? Is it biblical? Is it spiritual? Is it all of the above? I
think it's all the above. And one thing I try to do is I try to have a framework that I use to look at what's happening. I try to look at patterns. I look at trends. I try not to focus too hard on thinking, is this particular individual good or bad? Because actually, I don't think that there's very many people in this world that are like black and white, good or bad. I think there's a lot of people that are doing really bad things that may think they're doing the right thing, right? And even the road to hell's paved with good intentions, right? It's that's the thing, is I think there's a lot of people that are doing actually really bad things that maybe they think they're doing like what's good. And so I think there's definitely people that are doing evil. I think there's people that are psychopaths that just want to create suffering, just want to enslave humanity, right? And so. But in general, though, I try to take a big step back and look at, okay, what are the patterns? And so, even looking at Trump, you mentioned, Trump, and
I did.
Whether it's Trump or, Kash Patel, which, I interviewed Kash Patel before. I knew the guy, right? I talked to him backstage. I had him on the show before, and there's all this, so much hope. It's like, oh my gosh, we've got, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, and I was never excited about Pan Bondi, much more about Matt Gaetz. But I think that Israel's like, let's not have, we can't have this guy as the HD.
They ousted him in a
heartbeat. That wasn't going to happen. But I've tried to like kind of maintain that overall perspective. And so where I think that we are is, I think that right now the world is going through a massive change. We're going from a unipolar world that was built on the back of the dollar, built on the back of the military industrial complex, post World War II, Bretton Woods, everything that the U.S. has established, right? And I think that obviously there's a lot of corruption within our own government, within our own agencies. Like, that's even to your average person now, they're like, oh yeah, they're really, really bad, right? It's not like it was 20 years ago where they're, oh, I trust the FBI, I trust the CIA, they're protecting Americans, right? But so I think that where we are though is I think that there are two pretty large competing forces that are kind of battling it out for control over the world. And I think that above those, I think you still have a central group of very wealthy banking families and bloodlines, and who knows what else. Maybe they're, not from this planet. Maybe they're not even human. Exactly. They got forked tongues coming out. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I can never prove it. It's like I've read a lot of David Icke stuff. I've done enough to say, okay,
I
there's
know.
a possibility there's some weird stuff happening.
It could be real, man. It could really, like, legitimately be a thing. I mean, I hate to be. I'm like, I'm that guy. I'm that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, even reading, Donald Marshall. I'm not sure if you're coming across him talking about the underground facilities. I mean, there's some wild stuff, but it's like none of that is really actionable, right? Even if you knew that we were being ruled by these reptilian overlords, like, what are you gonna do, right? So it doesn't help. You know what I mean? So now it's kind of like, okay, well, there's some crazy evil stuff happening, but what can I focus on? And so I do think, though, that there is a big war going on. I think that you do have the CCP, you have the BRICS alliance, you have Russia, you have a lot of that, group, right, that is working very actively on destroying the West, destroying America. What they say is that they're trying to build this multipolar world. But if you look at the CCP, which I've done pretty extensive research into the CCP and the history, and I know that people will come out and say, "Oh, well, the CCP, like, that was, that was Marx, and it was actually the European bankers, and the Jews, they're the ones that created communism and put it into China." It's like, there's a lot of validity to that, right? I think there's a lot of people that pretend to be Jews. They're probably Satanists. They hide within that, as in they hide within a lot of religions, right? But I do think that the CCP is what I think of as Frankenstein's monster. Even though Mao got his funding from Yale and a lot of the European banking money, and Rockefeller was involved in all that, I think what it's grown into is a very, very powerful threat. And if you look at their own military doctrine and some of their even leaked speeches, they want to be in control of the world, right? They want to reach a place by 2049 where the United States is actually colonized by them, right? And you can see it. You can read their actual speeches and everything to understand this. Oh gosh,
we're watching it
exactly.
happen,
We're watching it happen.
And I just want to say that 600 student thing when they were talking about, or 600,000 students. 600,000 is about 40 U.S. battalions of military. And 600,000 is also the size of the Russian army that's fighting the 800,000 Ukrainians. So just for like a perspective of what 600,000 Chinese students, 19 to 25-year-old students looks like, it looks like 40 to 45 battalions of U.S. troops. Just so just for some perspective on that, that's a lot of people.
I think you'd be naive to think that they're just these dorky kind of Chinese mathematicians. Right.
It might even be division. But anyway, go ahead.
So absolutely. I mean, it's a fifth column, right? This, building an army within the walls of your enemy's city, and activating
Sun Tzu, The Art of War. This is
it
their
is.
Plan. It's how to besiege a city without expelling your troops. Attack them by fire, attack by besiegement, cutting off their resources, throwing dead bodies over the wall to create contagion and pandemic. I mean, these are all corrupt the governments, create civil unrest so that the people are fighting each other while you take over. I mean, these are attacks of stratagem right out of The Art of War. I mean, these are
absolutely
very core and thousands of years old. To your point, that China is they've been a dynasty for a long time. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh no, I mean, even if you look at, I'm not sure if you've ever come across, there's a leaked speech from General Chi Hao-chien, who was I think he was defense minister, and he was one of the top generals. And there's a leaked speech that came out around 2000 that was leaked, and the Epoch Times got a hold of it, and they published it. And he literally in this speech says, we need to colonize America. We need their farmland. We can't do anything to take over their farmland. It's going to involve us destroying the land. So we can't nuke them. Like, we need to be able to use the fertile land of America. So in that speech, he literally says and outlines how most likely they'll need to kill between 1 and 200 million Americans through biological warfare, so they can then come in and seize our land. Right? And it's out there. And so, kind of taking a step. Exactly. So
weaken the military, the whole thing. Yeah.
The first responders, right? Everything.
Responders, hospital. Yeah. They not only did that, we lost trust in everyone. They've 30 to 40 million who knows who's are in here. I mean, 100%.
Exactly.
Step one.
And so looking at your original question of
Yeah.
where are we now, I think that Trump is in a difficult position. I think that he's a lot of what he's doing. He understands. I think he understands the threat of the BRICS and China and Russia. And so I think whether you're looking at his play in Venezuela, what's happening with Greenland, I think that a lot of it ties into a much bigger war that's being fought. I do think that there is a lot of control in our own government through the little kind of nation of Israel. Absolutely, it's not some conspiracy. I think it's there.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I also believe that the CCP would want nothing more than the entire kind of conservative or even liberal focus to be on Israel, right? Like the CCP does, they want that. So I think there's a lot of truth there, but I also think there's a lot of fanning of those flames to make people focus on Israel and not on the CCP. And so I think that that's also what's going on. And so I think that Trump is I'm not going to try to say I know Trump's intentions, right? I'm extremely disappointed with Operation Warp Speed. I'm extremely disappointed with the Epstein hoax, right? All this. And I think that he's, I think there's a lot of controllers that are controlling him. But I think that when you take a step back, what it comes down to is that the politicians and the elected officials and the agencies are not going to protect us. And if there's one thing that you can give Trump unlimited praise for, it's the fact that he's shown us that we can't rely on the politics to do anything for us. Of course,
he's a snake. I'm a snake before you let me in. He warned us.
I mean, I think that there's some positive things. Like I love seeing the gender stuff being pulled out of the military and schools, but that's also part of the communist tactic, is to create these kind of contentious issues that actually don't matter very much, right? And so it's like, let's create this whole gender movement, distract everyone from the invasion that's happening right before their nose, get everyone focused on gender, and then come in and fix the gender issue. It's like, wow, the country's being fixed, but actually the underlying issues aren't. And so I think that where it comes back to is that where I'm at least, is that I don't think that our nation is entering into a golden age. I think that's part of just gaslighting, if anything.
Golden shower. I keep saying golden shower. Stop it. Stop on me.
And so I just think that where we're at is that the time for us to come together as true Americans and unite around the Constitution and to build strong communities and to build resilience is the most important thing that we can focus on. Because as much as if people think it's bad right now with the current White House and DOJ and everything, what's going to happen if you've got Gavin Newsom in there? What's going to happen if you've got these kinds of people that are also in there? I mean, I think that it's going to get much worse, unfortunately. So anyway, I've been kind of on a little. But
I just agree with you. I just keep interrupting you because I'm like, yeah, spot on. Like that's 100% what's happening. I also think that part of it was, they saw how strong maybe this movement was, so they have to kind of make the leader betray the movement so that there becomes this infighting. And you can see that with even guys like Nick Fuentes, who I used to listen to Nick Fuentes, and now he's like wearing Jeffrey Epstein's vest, talking about how 14-year-olds don't qualify, and it's like, that's just gross, bro. Like we got a whole new level of problem. But you were, while you're saying that, then you're saying America first, and now you're just kind of polluting the America idea, because there was one time we were all like, let's do this, we're gonna fix the country, and now the leaders have kind of betrayed us. They keep saying it's a golden age. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think anything about this is golden, like we just joked. But also, let's just say that it's not as bad as it can be. And, I mean, I know you have a Noah thing. You got a thing. But, Noah built his ark in the sunshine. So if it is the golden age, like it's about to rain and it's about to get even worse. And I do kind of think that, if Kamala had gotten in and the country was in the place it's in just today, exactly the same way, except switch her out for him, like this MAGA America First thing would be so united and so angry against the politician that it almost had to be, the guy who is betraying, who's hiding this disgusting list. And, just the little things. I mean, Fort Knox now, accountability for Fauci, Mayorkas, Garland, Cohen, Walensky, Blinken, Garland, Comey, Cuomo. I mean, can you name it? Can we just go down the list? I mean, nothing. And then now, the leaders of this movement, some of even like the strongest, you mentioned the general, and I love that guy. I thought he was amazing. He worked with my uncle. Like, I know guys that served underneath him. I was a Marine, so I didn't. He's an Army, but I know a bunch of guys. And then now it's like they're kind of towing the line when it comes to Venezuela, and you're like, wait, what? We never talked about any of this. We were supposed to like make America great, and now we're still, Ukraine is ending on day one. Well, that didn't happen. We just gave them $900 billion more to go fight it's like, wait. So thank you for where you think we are, and because I agree with you that we're just kind of in a place right now where it's like the leadership has kind of stopped leading, and now America is in this chaos, and there are so many distractions. It's drug boats. Snatch that guy. Well, what happened to the drug boats? Did they just stop running drugs? Are we not doing that anymore? Or like, okay, now it's ICE on the street over here. Next it's Somalia fraud over here. It's like just to keep you going this way, so you're not focused on the goal. And the goal should be what you do and teach is preparing people. So what should people be doing now that we know or think we know kind of where we're at? How should people start?
I think that one thing, just to kind of tie in our discussion up to here so far into the actionable things, is pull yourself out of the game. Stop, saying, "Oh, I'm Team Tucker. I'm Team Candace. I'm Team Fuentes. I'm, Andrew Tate, this or Tim Pool." I think that's part of what it is.
Right.
I'm not going to say that these people are all being controlled, but one thing I do know is that they're in a big old club that we're not in. Right. And that's the thing. And you see these things too. Yeah, exactly. Right. And you'll see these videos and it's like, oh, there's like all these 10 different influencers that are fighting, yet they're all at this party together, hanging out. And it's like, and I think that you are interacting with a lot of the same people that I'm interacting with, and you see these different parts of it. And what you see is that there is this invisible wall that you cannot enter into that space unless you are one of them, right? Why is it that YouTube is pushing, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Steve Crowder? Why is it that these people, even though they're talking the same things in theory that you and I are talking about, how is it they're able to grow these massive, massive audiences? Because they're allowed to. There's reasons why. And without digging into that, I think that's part of it in terms of what we do. I think is just stop getting sucked into that. Stop getting distracted by the drama. And so I think that's part of it. But I think the other thing is focus on what we have control over. And that's it. Like, focus on what we have control over. And what we have control over is, first, myself, right? I can become more disciplined. I can increase my amount of faith in God. I can strengthen my own household. I can make sure my family's prepared. I can spend my time researching and learning and educating myself on the real problems that are happening and the real solutions, building community. Like, that's the big thing, is that just focus on what we have control over. And that's a lot of what I've really oriented myself around, is obviously still doing deep dives and exposing the plans of the globalists and doing the things that I think that we need to be doing, especially as a citizen journalist. Like, wait, what really happened with Charlie Kirk? I don't buy this this official story, right? Hey, what happened at Butler, PA? Like, I don't buy that official story, right? So it's important to still keep asking those questions. Pardon me. But I also think that it's very easy to get caught up in thinking that's going to win the war, right? Oh, we're going to be digital soldiers and we're going to expose the truth. Well, you're kind of fighting in an arena that they control. If you think that Elon Musk has come to unite humanity and to free us and to buy Twitter so there can be true free discourse, and he's done a lot of great things. I don't want to take away from that, but if you look at how rat poison works, it's 99 parts sweetness and it's 1 part poison, right? And that's the thing, is that we have to be looking out for that. And so
Yeah.
I think that we're at a place right now where there are large coalitions that are battling. There are alliances. There are things that are happening at levels that we can't even comprehend, that are so cloak and dagger and hidden. I think that regardless of which faction is doing what, there is a plan that is driving us into some sort of global technocratic system. If you look at, again, looking at Trump, I was so surprised and really let down on like what, day 2, and here's Larry Ellison. We're building these, here's
Yeah.
Sam Altman,
Bill
Elon
Gates having
Musk and
dinner.
Bill Gates
Having dinner with Bill Gates, just crazy.
it's just like, oh my goodness. So I do think that there is, the groundwork is being laid to build a global technocratic system, and we can't vote our way out of it. That's just the reality of it. But what we can do is understand that system and figure out how we can build our own self-reliance so that we can be as free as possible from that system. And so that's, again, a lot of what I'm doing. So I've got a few different projects that I've got going on, which we can talk about. One is that I've got a book coming out called Prep Like Noah. And it's like finally at the very like kind of end stages. We're actually at the stage of doing the initial kind of draft layout. And it's a serious book. It's going to be probably 300 plus pages, a lot of illustrations and information. So that's one thing. And I call it Prep Like Noah, the prepping guide for non-preppers, right? It's kind of the idea of it, is how to make it so that prepping can become much more accessible to people. So your average person can be more prepared, instead of just thinking, you buy a book, it's like Doomsday Survival Guide, and here's how to board up your windows for zombie apocalypse. It's like, actually, you know what? If most people had an extra month worth of like freeze-dried food, and maybe had a couple guns they knew how to use, and had a decent network of neighbors, and maybe a couple life straws, America would actually be way more resilient, right? So that's part of it, is that, kind of, I guess my overall fundamental mission is really helping Americans get back to what it means to be Americans. And a core part of that is self-reliance, the ability to take care of ourselves, the not relying on, sucking on the government teat, and not relying on FEMA to come help us when there's disaster, but just taking that into our own hands. And so we've got the book, Prep Like Noah, which is coming out soon. In conjunction with that, I'm actually launching an online community. So the website's buildtheark.com. So it's called the Ark Community. And this is within about a couple of weeks. I mean, I've been saying a couple of weeks for a while, but it's just, we keep kind of adding more to it and everything. But the idea of the Ark Community is it's a private network for people to build real connections. So we're going to have chapters in every state and in every individual country, as people kind of sign up for them. But the idea with that is that it's a private, secure platform where people can meet other people in their area, right? Because I think for a lot of people that think like you and I, a lot of us are really isolated. And you might think, gosh, I look around and like there's maybe one person I might know that thinks like I do, and that's not a good place. But there's a lot of people that think the way that you and I do, but you just don't know where they are. So the Ark community is really kind of building a platform for people to meet those people, to build those relationships. But it's also going to have a huge resource library, online courses, water purification 101, right? Things like that to train people, guest Q&As, like bring on people like yourself or experts in, solar or water, or say, Billy Bond with permaculture. So bringing on experts to do these, targeted Q&A sessions. So that's one thing. So that the website, it's not launched yet, but on buildtheark.com, there's like a little sign up form just to get on the wait list. So we've already got, I think we're over 3,000 people already kind of waiting on the wait list to get in, which is good momentum. So that's one thing. The other thing actually that we're just launching, like as we're having this conversation, my wife is finishing up the build for it. So it'll be ready by the time we're publishing this, is the website is readyscore.com. And so the idea with this is that a lot of people think that they're pretty well prepared, but you might be missing, like you might have a complete blind spot towards something you haven't thought about, right? Like for instance, waste disposal. Like if there's a grid down scenario, if you haven't thought through how you're going to handle getting rid of poop, as an example, like that right there might be the thing that actually destroys your entire community. Because if you're pooping and that poop's going into the river and there's cholera, and or it's kind of morbid, but how to dispose of someone that passes away. If you can't call the the mortician and have them come pick up a dead body, you have to dispose of that. And I know it's kind of gruesome, but if you look at what happens in countries with grid death scenarios, what ends up happening is you've got your great uncle John floating in the river, and the entire river is now poisoned, and people are dying from waterborne diseases. That's not good. And so anyway, so the idea with readyscore.com is it's free, right? That's the thing, is I'm trying my best to make things as accessible as possible. But you go to readyscore.com and you just take an assessment test. I think it's like 38 questions. And the idea is that it's helping people to assess where they're at with the readiness. So at the end of it, so you go through, it takes like maybe 7 or 8 minutes. You answer questions of like, okay, where do you live? Do you have what kind of water do you have access to? Do you have any kind of backup, heaters, et cetera? How much food do you have? There's all kinds of questions like that I would ask. Like if you said, hey, Seth, can you quiz me and see how ready I am? It's basically all the questions I would ask you. So what you do is you spend, again, 5 minutes, 6, 8 minutes or so. You answer the questions, and then you get to the end of it, and it gives you your overall ready score out of 100. So maybe you're like a 60 or maybe a 75, whatever it is. So it gives you your overall score, but then it also will tell you where your biggest weaknesses is or are. And so it kind of gives you a little report at the end of it that shows you, hey, actually, you're great in all these areas, but actually, you've got no medical training, or you don't have anything more than your basic first aid kit, right? Yeah. So it's really to help people identify where their weaknesses are. Because again, that's what I really feel this very strong calling to do, is not to turn America into a bunch of doomsday preppers, but just to make most of America just generally better prepared than they are. And so that's also something. So we've got a few other things as well that we're doing, but those are the main ones. Obviously, with the Man in America podcast, which is just maninamerica.com to find all the links for that. We have the book coming out, the community, the online community, and then the preparedness test. A lot of other ideas we're working on, but it's just mostly my wife and I, so we can only do so much at a time. So anyway, I'll let you jump in there.
I love it, and we're talking about having you on the Galileo app, so we can share all your information now. So all of our users, we've had about 6,000 downloads of our app on the Apple Store, and then we have a bunch on Google Play too, and we got a couple thousand users that actually check in, and we're just putting good information out there because we're very much like-minded. That's why I really look up to what you're doing. I respect what you're doing, and I encourage everyone to check out everything that you're doing, because that's what it really is. It's I've thought about this, and then I'll give you the last word. I know you gotta dip out of here, but if you're here now, you're a survivor. Your family was a survivor. Like, they existed. If somebody in your past got eaten by a wolf, great somebody, your lineage was cut off. You're only here now because every single person back to the beginning of time made it long enough to have your great whomever. And not just one, it had to have multiples to end up with the two. So you come from this instinctive generational strength and ability to fight bears and civil wars and revolutionary wars. And I have relatives that were in both of those. My mother's a DAR person, Daughters of the American Revolution. So it's like, if you're here now, you probably have family that did that. Like, you're part of this. And if not here, then maybe in another country. Maybe they survived the potato famine. Maybe they survived plagues in London. I mean, who knows? But like, we're all here now because we come from this great strength and this ability to adapt and overcome no matter what has been placed in front of our ancestors. So to kind of roll over and just give it all up because Amazon and Netflix shut off and Uber Eats doesn't deliver anymore, and just go, well, I guess I'm going to die, it just seems like kind of a waste. So, I'm going to give you the last 4 minutes and then tell everyone where they can find you and everything, and then just hang on so I can say goodbye to you once I have
of course, man.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
So I think also a big part of this is just what is our mindset? And this is why I think this is where we really have to do some work, because if you look at what brought America to what it is right now, it's that our culture changed. The moral fabric that held our nation together has been attacked and has changed. So there's no common moral values anymore. It's you look back at these videos of the 40s and the 50s, and you can see that families were strong. right? And of course, there have always been problems, there have always been issues, but that culture, like that's what was attacked. Because, as Breitbart said, politics is downstream from culture. And the communists and the globalists, they knew this. They knew they had to destroy the culture of what it meant to be an American for them to successfully overthrow this country. And so we have to rebuild that culture. But I think that we have to rebuild the culture from a position of strength and faith and purpose, not out of fear and survival. And that's what's really changed from where I was at, say, 2021, 22 to where I am now. Like I'm like, even though I'm very, very aware of the threats that our nation faces, whether it's how weak our grid is, what's in our food, what they're spraying in the skies, like far more aware than your average person because it's my job to be aware, right? I'm happy almost every day. I wake up excited for the day. I wake up thinking that I've got purpose. And I think that's the key, is that we have to align ourselves with a purpose that creates something greater than ourselves. And I think for some people, their purpose is to protect their family, to make sure their children are safe, to homeschool their kids, to pull them out of the public system, to move states if you don't want your kids, being bound by the vaccine requirements of your current state, to, sell up and move to a smaller house in a rural area so that your wife can actually afford to stay home with the kids instead of being forced to work 2 jobs, right? So that's a very, very important purpose. And so I think that my kind of what I'm at, and this is again what you're seeing through everything I'm doing, is I feel like, okay, well, God has given me this platform, right? That I'm able to reach millions of people every month through what I'm doing. And so what am I doing with that? Am I going to kind of fan the flames of the new viral confrontation to get, compete for clicks? Or can I use that platform to help educate people, to give them confidence in what they're doing, to simplify the world around us, help them make sense of it? If I can do that, I want to do that. And that's a big part of what my purpose is that I just want to help more people be able to orient themselves properly and not live in fear, not prep out of fear and survival, but do so out of duty. And think about, even thinking about, okay, what does happen, as you mentioned before, if that neighbor comes to you? Are you going to say, get off my property, I'm going to shoot you? Or are you going to say, look, I don't have any extra food, my family's struggling. However, here's a little pack of seeds, right? You can grow these seeds. I'll give you some advice. Or you might say, look, I am barely getting by, but tell you what, let's barter. Or do you're a mechanic, right? And the guy's like, oh yeah, I'm a mechanic. Well, tell you what, how about you help me fix my generator and I'll give you some rice, right? It's thinking about how can we unite and build community. And it's amazing actually when you see these things happening. And that's the thing about this whole situation, is that as frightening as it all seems, it's actually a very beautiful thing that's happening. Because if you look at the fourth turning and you look at where we are, right? We're at that stage of, we've had these really good times that have created these weak men, and those weak men then create these really bad times. But those bad times create strong men and strong families and strong women and strong feminine women that align with their roles of, not going to get some corporate job doing PowerPoint while your kids are off at some government daycare, right? But I think so what's happening is that it seems really scary, but I think that it's actually really good, because we're being reoriented around what it means to be human again, and what survival looks like. And if you look at a lot of times when there are disasters, that people come together. And I think that we have this amazing opportunity to come together as Americans. And it's like if your neighbor that maybe had a Joe Biden sign up a couple of years ago, if they came over and they said, hey, Seth, man, like the power's out. I've got a 3-year-old kid. Our house is 40 degrees inside. You've got a fireplace. It's like at that moment, it doesn't matter who you voted for, because you're an American and you're a human, right? And so you say, you know what? Come stay the night with us. That right there will build a bond with that person that will rise above any kind of political idea. It doesn't matter. And like that's the opportunity that we have right now. It's like, we had this big ice storm that just passed, and we sent out a list to all of our homeschool group. And I said, I was talking with my wife, and she's like, what can we do? I said, tell you what, there's probably like 15 families. I said, send a message out and tell all of them and say, look, if you don't have power, if you don't have heat, you are all welcome to come to our house. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're in our little network that we're building, come to our house. We'll keep you warm. We'll keep you fed. And thankfully, no one had to. In our region, we only had heavy snow. We didn't have ice and power outages. But like that's the thing, is like you start doing those things more, and you realize that disaster or that crisis can rebuild relationships that have been lost for generations. And I think it's a beautiful opportunity that we have right now to come back together as Americans, be aligned around a purpose that's rooted in faith and not in fear, and to actually build a country that I think we'd be proud to hand down to our children. And all the DC stuff, all that kind of stuff, it'll collapse under the weight of its own evil. Like I think that's kind of my assessment. It's got cancer of corruption to the very bones. There's no reviving it. There's no saving it. The most you can do is to insulate yourself and create such strength that regardless of what happens, it's like we're going to get through it. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Well, amen to that, brother. That's amazing. So, yeah, there you go. You heard it. So where can people find you? I know you said you listed off a couple URLs. Can you just rattle those off again real quick so everyone?
Yep. So the podcast, which is just Man in America, is just maninamerica.com. I'm on Rumble and all the different channels and Spotify and whatnot. But if you go to maninamerica.com, it has all the icons for where you can listen or watch the show. So that's it. The book is, well, actually, I'll probably put a little landing page up. So preplikenoah.com. I'll probably put a little page up there. It's not there yet. By the time we publish it, probably will be. That if they want to get on an early list to be notified when the book comes out or when the pre-sale starts. So preplikeNoah.com is the book. Buildtheark.com is the online community. Again, there's just a little sign up form right now if you want to be on the wait list. Right now, again, there's a few thousand people on there, so you can join that wait list to be notified when that community opens up. So that's buildtheark.com. And then readyscore.com. That's the free assessment. So if you want to get, you're being more serious about being prepared as a family, you want a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance, it's a great place to start. Helps you identify where your weak points are so you can make sure that you're covering those up. Because if you've got unlimited food, if you've got unlimited guns, everything, but say you've only got 30 gallons of water stored and you have no way of purifying your water, like, I'm sorry, but you're not going to make it for very long, right? So that's that. So, and you can, I guess you'll probably put all those links in the description, but those are the links for the different things I'm doing right now.
Well, I love it, brother. Well, keep up the great work, man. I really appreciate all your insight, and I encourage everyone to go and build your ark for sure, 100%. It's time, and I agree with you. They're gonna do what they do, and until they actually come to our door and try to do something to us, it's not about the aggression towards them, because they're just gonna, whatever, you can't change it. Like you said, it's about you being ready, because what's going to happen when they go away is that they're going to take a lot of the things that they've been supporting and propping up, and you're just going to be left on your own. But everybody can do it. You and your family and your neighbors, it's very possible. It's actually easier than you think, and it's 100% necessary. So anyway, you heard it first, citizen, from the man himself, the man in America. Thank you, Seth. I really appreciate you. God bless you, brother. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you too, man. It's been great. Been absolutely great. Thank you.
Guys. All righty.